Okay, so this isn't so much a tutorial as it is just like what I expect you to do in about 3 hours in terms of getting a sketch down and creating stand-in objects and all of that for project 3 to create your scene so that when you finish modeling your object, you have a place to put it that's already ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to focus on an outdoor scene just because it's going to be a little quicker to get things going. So usually to start with, let's say that let's say we're in some creepy, I don't know, creepy forest where we can see the trunks of the trees. I'm not worried about branches or anything right now. So I'm going to go ahead and my stand-in object for tree trunks is going to be cylinders. But I'm going to want more than one, and I don't want to have to manually position all of them. That's a nightmare. So I'm going to use a cloner. I'm going to put the cylinder as a child of the clone. I'm going to put not the cloner as a child. I'm going to put the cylinder as a child of the cloner. There we go. We've got some trees. They need to be taller. So we are going to, we're going to leave the radius there. We're going to make these substantially taller. I'm going to make them 2,000 units tall. Because then depending on which angle I have the camera at in the end, I won't see the tops or bottoms. I'm going to select this cylinder, and there's little bits of detail that I can add very, very quickly to, like, if I want tree trunk texture, that's like low poly, and I don't really care how good it looks. But I just need something so that it catches the light like the tree objects would. I'm going to start by boosting my rotation and height segments up pretty high. And then I will use just this displacer, put this on the cylinder. Nothing happens because with the displacer, what you have to do is you have to choose the shader. So I'm going to choose noise. And you can already see, and maybe you're happy with that. I want it to be chunkier. So I'm going to click on this little arrow here, and I'm going to choose one of these forms of cellular noise. Maybe mod noise. No, let's do cell. It's just so obvious. Look at that. That is awful. And so then what I also need to do here is you'll see it's like hard edges and smear. And that's because the falling angle is set to 40 degrees. I could increase this and smooth everything out, or I could decrease it and just say, you know what, let's just do facets, which is what I'm going to do. And so then the other thing I'm going to do with this displacer is under noise, I'm going to set this to, let's just say 1,000%, because that'll streak things out a little bit. And we'll just say 50 and 50. And then I think global scale will be fine. Now, the other issue is that, right, these clones are all pretty close together. And so I really need to increase the count here first. I'm going to say 12 and 12. And then the size, I could use this scale thing. Well, I'm going to have to zoom out here. Or I could just grab this and pull these further apart from one another. And zoom way out, right? So I've got a huge forest, 144 trees. That should be more than enough. Now, I don't want them to be uniform, right? These aren't intended to be planted. So if the cloner is selected, I can come up here. I can go to MoGraph, Effector, and Random. And because these are so long and tall, I don't really need to make any changes. This is really just, right, I can set things here. I could make this like, I don't know, 75 and 75. So they're a little bit more. We could do scale as well and maybe say uniform and just set this to 0.5, right? And then I'm going to get some that are skinnier, some that are thicker. Okay, so I've got my trees. It's a huge forest. I'm going to go ahead and create a landscape for this to sit on. So we can come up here, grab our landscape. And I want this, it's not going to be like a crazy mountain or anything. It's going to be relatively flat. So I'm going to just make it bigger. I'm going to make it like 5,000, maybe 200 here and 5,000 here. Right. And I'm not even going to get to the edges that way. Maybe I'll just keep stretching it until it gets to the edge of the trees. But some of the decisions I can make here a little bit. I love that they're short. That's all right. Okay. So already I've started to get, right, a scene constructed, but there's no lights, no shadows. It looks like the bases of the trees are actually kind of, oh no, here we go. There we go. So, again, I'm trying to do this quickly. So, all right, so I've got my forest. This is not my main object, but I'm getting there. One thing I do want to do is I want to have materials on here. So I'm just going to create a material. And if I want it to be like, let's say this is like a sandy soil or something, let's go ahead and add some bump to this. Again, noise. And these are things that take very little time to do. 3% maybe. I'm doing like a really small fine grit here, and the color is white. And reflectance is just sort of flat. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this as the floor. If I render this, you can see that adds some nice texture to it. It softens things up, and it'll do nice things when it catches the light. For the trees, I could use the same texture if I wanted to. I'm just going to plop that on the cloner. Let's render that and see what that looks like. That is hideous. Let's just create another material and make that the tree material, and we'll see if that fixes things up. It still looks a little bit weird, but maybe if we put a light in here, we'll get this looking a little better. So with the light, I'm just going to start with, maybe we'll start with an infinite light or sunlight, maybe, because that already has some color to it. And the difference is the sunlight, you can just set the time of day. Right now it's noon on October 17th, 2023. And we could always, right, change the time of day. I'm going to go ahead and render this. Right, so I'm getting these nice long shadows, hard shadows. That's kind of cool. Maybe it's close to sunset. I don't know why it's so looks so sunsetty. Maybe it's in like a weird time zone or something. So 5:45 is too early. Let's do 6:45. Okay, let's do 9:45. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so we've got our sunlight cascading through this forest. You'll notice it's like super dark in here. Right, those shadows are super hard. If you want to take the time to use some global illumination for this sketch, you just turn that on. I would set the preset to exterior preview and go ahead and render this, right? And so you can see that now, right, light's bouncing off these other trees and filling in this space. So already I'm starting to get a scene, and I need to start thinking about like what my object is. In my case, let's go ahead and add some other things, right? So we've used a couple primitives. Let's go ahead and throw some rocks in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do this with another cloner. It's going to be kind of ugly, I'm sure, but I'm going to use a platonic. I am going to put this in the cloner. And then what I want to do, because this landscape, one of the nice things with the cloner is I can very quickly stick objects to the surface. If I go to the object tab, change the mode to object, and then use this little pencil and select my platonic. Oops. No, that's hilarious. That's not what I want. I want the landscape. You can see I've already started getting those platonics spread out. And so I can come in here and I can say, oh, I want more than 20 copies. You can choose which direction, like if you want them on edges, polygon centers, surface, volume, axis, whatever. We're just going to leave them as they are. Again, I'm going to do a similar thing where I'm going to increase the number of segments here to like 5. I will select my cloner and I will go to my effectors. I'm going to use the exact same effector so that some are smaller, some are larger. And then once I've done that, I can actually turn this off. I can select my displacer, copy it, paste it, and then make it a child of this platonic as well. And I'm going to get something kind of rock-like over there. We go ahead and render this. You can see they actually do look pretty much like rocks in the forest, which is awesome. Okay, So we've used some primitives, right? That's one of the things I said you could do. Obviously, if you're building an indoor space, you should build the whole room. All you have to do is use planes. You can make them editable, delete polygons to put a hole in it so that light comes through like for a window. Um, I'm not going to do that for this one. But so I've used some primitives, and then let's say, oh, I want there to be some flowers or, something around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the asset browser to do some other stand-ins. So if I go to Window, the top of the screen, go to Asset Browser, come down, just select Models to clear things out a little bit, and come down to Plants. I can't remember if it's under Plants or House Plants. Plants. Here we go. There's cutouts, which are just 2D assets that you can drop in. We're not going to worry about those right now. I am going to just say garden and exotic. That's hilarious. I'm going to go to grass elements, and I'm going to go to low resolution because I know they're not going to take super long to render. But let's say I want some dandelions in here. I'm just going to click and drag, drop this in my scene. I won't see it right away because it's going to be at 0, 0, 0. But if I have this object selected and I use this scatter pen tool, what this does is scatters this object over a surface. So if I select this, and you'll see now I can just, right, I could come in here, and granted I'm making a lot of them. I probably should have changed that setting. Let's undo that. With the scatter pen selected, let's make this object spacing a little bit bigger. And is there some way I can randomize that in here very quickly? No. Okay. So that's fine. Maybe I'll make the radius bigger. Maybe that'll help me too. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and plunk down some dandelions. I got some on the side of that tree, but that's fine. Okay, so I've got my dandelions. Let's go ahead and render this. And you can see that already I've got these little dandelions all over my forest floor. And let's say that with all of this, my goal is that I want this to be kind of spooky, and I need my main object, right? There's an object that, I'm going to be modeling, or I'm in the process of modeling, but if I can create a stand-in for it, we're probably in a good spot. So to create the stand-in of my object, because it's an organic form, and I'm just going to do like, I don't know, a frog head or something. I'm going to go ahead and use the volume builder, but first I'm going to take a sphere. It's way over here. Let's go ahead and I really like this view. So I'm going to it's scattered as always. I'm going to go ahead and create a camera. It's here. I'm going to stay not in that camera so it doesn't lose its framing. I'm going to grab this sphere, and I'm going to, now that I'm in a better view, I'm going to pull this over closer, and then I will turn the camera on. Great. That's a good enough spot. Okay. So I've got this sphere. I am going to create, I should do this in a little bit different way. Okay. So sphere has been created. It's at 0, 0, 0. Going to create a symmetry, which if it's not there, it should be here. And if it's not there, then you should be able to go to create and generator and find it there. Okay, so I've got my symmetry. I'm going to put this sphere in as a child of the symmetry, and then I'm going to, and the sphere might not be where I want it to be. Yep, that's in the wrong spot, so I'm going to 0 that as well. Now I'm going to lift this up, pull this over, bring it closer to the camera, although I could have been doing this in another scene, but whatever. Okay, so this is going to be my frog very soon, and it's just really going to be a frog head, or a really blobby looking frog. So I've got my sphere. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that, make this a child of the sphere, and then I'm going to set the size to, I don't know, 44. and move this up. And you'll see that because I have that symmetry on, look at that. Now I have two frog eyes very, very quickly. And maybe I could add more to this if I really wanted to. I could create a capsule and bring that over and do some other things, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to do these things. And then let's go ahead and put it in the volume builder for no, I don't even think we need to do that. I think we can just do this. Now with the frog, frogs are slimy. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new material, which is this material here, I believe. No, it's this one here. I'm going to make this the material for the symmetry. And then I'm going to open up this and I'm going to go to reflectance and I'm going to make him a little bit slimy by adding reflectance, dropping this way down, rendering this. He's a little bit too shiny. We'll make him a little bit more smeary. Maybe I'll throw some noise on here too, just to make him less evenly shiny. But he's still, right? He's still a very glossy frog, so I'm going to make this maybe even lower. And I may set this instead of average to additive or something. We'll see if that works a little bit better. Maybe. Okay, so let's say this is my main object. I've got frog in here. Now, something else you might want to do is rename everything. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to take all your time. Okay, I'm going to go back to my camera view. So I've got my camera in the scene. It's set. I'm figuring out where I want to position the frog, which, maybe it's over here. Maybe we're looking over the frog's shoulder. And maybe there's some spooky light in the forest that it's investigating. Okay, so at this point, right, we've got our frog. I'm using global illumination. If I don't want to use that, if it ends up slowing things down too much for this sketching, we can use an additional light. But to start with, I'm going to see if with global illumination on, I can actually use volumetric lighting. So we're going to bring this light over here so it's somewhere visible. I'm going to turn shadows on area. Visible light is going to be set to volumetric. And I'm just going to render it as it is and see if I get volumetric lighting with this on. I do. So you can kind of see that volumetric light there. You can see that this brightens up the scene significantly. And so we are going to make a couple changes to that because what I really want is kind of like a low level of fogginess. If I go to details and if I go to visibility and I say inner distance and outer distance, this is where I can kind of set a couple of settings. So if I set this to like 1,000 and set this to 200, not 2,200, and then render this, you'll see that now I've got this kind of white haze it's a little bit bigger. This light is still pretty far from where I want it to be, so let's go ahead and zoom out. Without that camera, yeah, it's like way far away from my scene. So let's, oh, I need to use the move tool. That's where my problems are at. Okay, so we're going to bring this over here a little bit, so it's just a little closer. We can kind of see, we'll be able to see better like how it's lighting up the scene. I might even turn the sun off temporarily just so I can see what this is doing. Okay, so you can kind of see how that's working. Let's give this light some color. We're going to make it let's make it a teal to start with. And, you can see that, right, the volumetric light is pretty even right now. So I am going to go to noise and I'm going to turn on visibility. And then the visibility scale, let's just set this to 10 in the Y, because what that's going to do is it's going to kind of smear things and make you can kind of see how it's lines and edges down there now. I might make this whole thing bigger under visibility. I could set this to 2, or let's set this to 5,000. So really the whole woods are full of it. And then we'll set this to 500. Let's see what we get. That's going to take a lot longer to render. So this might be a point where I turn off global illumination, although it's really creating. All right, so you can kind of see how what this haze is looking like. Now, with this relative scale, this one here, basically what that means is, do I want this to be like a big sphere of light, or do I want it to be a visible light, or do I want it to be smushed? So if I make this 10% and render this, you'll see that now, right, I've got kind of fog that's kind of closer to the ground. And there's some crazy weird blue light that's in the forest for some reason, who knows. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down a little closer to the ground plane. So it is a little bit lower. I might rotate my view a bit and just see how this looks from here. All right, so that's starting to look pretty cool. It's still not quite low enough. Let's see what this does. Okay, so that's getting there, but that light color isn't necessarily great, so we'll just tweak that. And again, these are things where, because I don't have like crazy textures or materials on anything, I have some reflectance on, but that's about it. I'm able to render these lighting scenarios pretty quickly. Okay, so let's go through our camera and let's see where that's at. Let's go ahead and render from this view. Okay, so you can kind of see the tops of the trees, and you can see this one dandelion on the side here. We can see our friend toad, and these other objects and the dandelions on the forest floor as well. So we're kind of getting there, right? We've got the scene started. We've got only one light in it right now. The sun, no matter what I do, is going to be probably too intense, but we'll see what happens here. That might add some really beautiful, oof. I mean, that's weird, but that's not what we're going for. So I'm going to delete the sun entirely. And let's just say it's more of a nighttime scene. I'm going to pop out of the camera again. I'm going to create another Omni light. On this one, I'm not going to turn shadows on. I am going to make it volumetric. And I'm going to go over here and say, let's make the outer distance. Let's do 5,000 again. Inner distance 500 again. And then in this case, we're going to say the color, let's make it a deeper blue. And then we will, we will move this light. The idea is that this is going to be a background light behind where we're looking with the key trees, with the idea that this should, let's see what happens when we go to our camera again. Right, and so the intensity is a little too high, but you can see there's like that creepy blue glow in there, which is something I like. I might rotate this camera view a little bit, just because of how I set up that light. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this a deeper blue color, which should drop the intensity, and I'll drop the intensity down a little bit. We'll see what we get there. It might be too dark now. Oh no, that's good. And this green is also, again, probably too intense. Yeah, that's limey. Let's go to a more true green and actually make it a little bit deeper and see what we get. And again, it might just be too much. It might just be too much intensity, right? This is intended to be somewhat low lit. And there's this one tree floating off in space in the background. Great. Okay. So, right. So very quickly, I was able to put together a simple scene. ideally you're doing a bit more planning than this. You're figuring out, like, if it's like a bedroom, like where all the objects go in the bedroom, or you're doing a little bit more thoughtful placement of a few elements at least close to the camera. The If I open up this scatter object and open up this dandelion, I might go ahead and scale these up 10 times. See if that scales them. No. Why not? Oh boy. Can I just scale all of these? It says they're at mixed scales already. That's problematic. Can I scale the whole? That seems like a bad idea. Let's just see it. I just want to make these bigger. We're just going to go for it. 10, 10. 10. Perfect. Look at that. Okay. There's this one that's like huge. But if we go ahead and render this now, this is a much more interesting scene. So ideally, you would have other things that you would bring in. I've only brought one object in from the thing. I have no idea how long it's going to take to render this with global illumination turned on. Oh, not so bad. Okay, so this feels more to scale right now that those dandelions are actually like the size of a frog. Yeah. So, right. So this is a way that I can very quickly use pre-made assets to just sort of throw something together and use it as a sketch. And then I would come back in and actually have, if I was doing a frog character, I'd have my frog. I would find rocks that actually look better and look like rocks. I might maybe start by using these trees, but do a lot more work with texture and everything to get the bark to look like tree bark. And if these are so prominent that for this project, we'd need to talk about if you were modeling the dandelions or not yourself. But yeah, you can tell, like, how the other part of this is like, how much detail would I need on these trees, right? Are they almost there? Do I need just a little tiny bit more? Like with these rocks here, do I need any more detail on some of these? Do I just need to throw a little bit of texture on there, call it good? Yeah, are there other details? But the frog clearly would need a lot more work. And maybe this isn't the best placement because I won't be able to see the face or anything like that, just the back. And maybe there's some other elements that would be put in here, but this is sort of what I wanted to show you, is like, work quickly, just try and get something that's got some rule of thirds going on or some other things happening. And it might be good to render it to the picture viewer so you can actually get the framing of the camera, because this is almost square right now, but it's actually going to be rectilinear when it gets done. Awesome. So that's what I would like for Thursday, and I'd like you to basically upload your scene and a render of that scene on Thursday. Again, yeah, and just try and really time yourself. Like, try and keep it to 3 hours. I don't want you spending all your time working on this. I'd much rather that you were getting tutorials and everything done and just like block out the 3 hours for class for this, this one project. It is due, I think I set it for 10 o'clock on Thursday night. So you do have a bit of flexibility in when you do it. Yeah. So, I might need to adjust my camera a bit, although he is pretty much rule of thirds there. And there's a couple other things that would need to be changed, and I'm not super happy with the lighting. I would sit here for another 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and tweak and tweak and tweak until I was happy. But even within however long this tutorial took, or not even tutorial, this video took, you can see I got something somewhat interesting pretty quickly. Okay. That's all I got. I'll see you all next week.